is wonderfully heartwarming to see everyone here to celebrate poetry at a time of resurgence after the easing of COVID measures. I am Lakan, and I am a poet based in the Philippines. It has become necessary for us to engage with the digital for publishing and marketing since most of society has found a presence there. This year, the Get Luckier print launch will be hybrid at Costa Ru and on Poetry Festival Singapore Facebook page, which you are now viewing. And it has been 6 years since Get Lucky. While some things have remained the same, such as the collaborative ties between the Philippines and Singapore, other things have changed vastly, and in no small part due to technology. We have seen how technology has disrupted us at practically every touch point throughout the day. And we have often wondered how it will impact us in our fellowships in the next 50 years. And we are so delighted to have such inspiring writers from Singapore and the Philippines today here at the Poetry Festival Singapore. And this event, of course, is called Get Luckier. And let's get lucky in literature. And I think we have these writers to show us the way, maybe a trick or two. And we will start off. I'm very excited about this particular writer because, not to mention, I'm a huge fan of his bake shop.
Thank you, thank you.
And this writer is from the Philippines and a real estate entrepreneur as well, college teacher, economics and pop culture. Oh wow, political analyst and moderator of the Pandesal Forum of the 83-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. He writes poetry in English and in Filipino. He has won 15, wow, 15 Catholic Mass Media Awards CMMA for his Philippine Star newspaper column and 3 Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for literature. He has also been honored with 3 CMMA Hall of Fame awards, including CMMA Hall of Fame awards for Best Opinion Column and Best Business Column. See, we're going to be lucky today. And let's all welcome here at Poetry Festival Singapore, Get Luckier, Mr. Wilson Lee Flores.
Thank you very much, Lakan, and to all the poets in Singapore and the Philippines. Good afternoon, good day, good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. I'd like to share a poem written about, it's about resilience because we just came out of the pandemic. 3 family members who inspire me with their stories of resilience across 2 centuries. The title of the poem is Indomitable. I just read this simple poem. Indomitable. How dare we even fathom surrender, stumbling and falling into the abyss of despair, numbed by cold, dark dungeon of night, when there is always the promise of sunrise. Once a lanky migrant worker in 19th century Manila, labored each day and slept every night for 18 years on a 4-legged woodworking bench which he called horse bench, indefatigable, unrelenting in grit, sweat, and tears. A basketball rookie battled in streets of Tondo, brawling through the capricious, cruel odds of life, enduring bruises of fate and the numerous brutish hard knocks, but defiantly sustained by dreams of immortal life. A twice widowed teacher was uncowed, raised two kids all by her stoic self, persevering in an unheralded vocation, yet always grateful, prayerful, and brave. Why fear the shellacking of delirious typhoon, profaning at lacerations and deluge, paralyzed by brutish bludgeonings of gloom, when there is obstinate, adamant hope as our refuge? Thank you. Simple pun lang.
Thank you. Wow,
Thank you.
Wilson, this is, I heard a gossip, Wilson.
Yes.
That poem you just shared
Yes.
is freshly baked.
Yes. I wrote it last night. Last night. Thank you.
But it is, there's beauty in a freshly baked poem. And I think we
Thank you,
saw the
Lakan.
sincerity. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
that, Wilson. Now,
Thank you, man.
Wilson,
Yes.
before I let you go,
Yes.
uh, I would have to ask,
Yes.
how has um, your bake shop as a business influenced your writing?
Very fascinating. When I bought it several years ago, one thing that I discovered is it has a lot of wonderful poets who were customers. So it became a place for me to casually meet them. Like Pete Lacaba, I met him 2 3 years ago here, and then he even gave me a book of poems by his brother Eman Lacaba. And because of him, we held a poetry and music night just before the start of the pandemic lockdown. It was March, just one day before they closed everything in the whole of Luzon. We had one in honor of him. We had all these poets and musicians. So it became a nice, it's a humble place where intellectuals, writers get to casually meet each other. So great question, what you just said.
Thank
What
you,
you just
Wilson.
asked. Yes, thank you.
And you know what, Wilson?
Yes.
It doesn't mean it has to stop anytime soon.
Yes, we'll invite you. We'll do this there.
Oh,
That's
absolutely. I
another
mean,
version of poetry reading.
that will be
Thank
great,
you.
and I would love to, because not only his big shop is an amazing landmark of how resiliency and how resurgence happens every day in a bake shop, and in poetry or in writing.
I forgot to
And
tell you pala, Lakan, ever since I got to buy it, I celebrate World Poetry Day every year there. March 21 every year. And coincidentally, two previous ambassadors of Singapore were our special guests. Coincidence. For the World Poetry Day celebration, they had to read their favorite poem there with Filipino poets. And
that's
and
great. Wow.
and during World Poetry Day, from the morning up to the time we close, everyone who brings in their original poem in any language, whether English, Bisaya, or Ilocano, you can use it to pay for a cup of brewed coffee the whole day.
Wow. Wow.
I admire poets.
And I think poetry also admires you,
I hope
Wilson.
I will learn from people like you, Lacan, and all the great poets here. Thank you.
You know, and and I think, since Wilson has talked about much about that collaboration of business, big shop,
Yes.
and poetry and writing,
Yes.
this next writer is about collaboration too, and it's about bridging those literary hands and minds together, because this writer is also a researcher whose work has been published in several countries, regions, and cultures. She has contributed poetry to various anthologies and journals in Singapore, Asia, Croatia, and even the United States. Her short fiction has appeared in 22 new Asian short stories in 2016 and the Best Asian Short Stories 2018. She has co-edited Get Lucky, an anthology of Philippine and Singapore writers. She is the author of the contemporary novel The Rosales House from Penguin Random House, Southeast Asia. Let us all welcome. Woo! I am feeling lucky about this. Uh, Migs Bravo-Dutt. Since of course technology has its own mishaps sometimes, and since we are doing this live for Poetry Festival Singapore, we have those things. But don't worry, we got you covered. While we're waiting for Migs Bravo Dot, we would like to thank, of course, you who is watching now on this Facebook live, and I hope that you continue supporting Poetry Festival Singapore and all of the events that have been made accessible by Poetry Festival Singapore this year. So do check out the social account of Poetry Festival Singapore on Facebook, Instagram, and all other available platforms for you to enjoy the other programs. Now, I think let us see if Migs is already available. Migs, hello, Migs.
Sorry guys, there's a party happening and we're celebrating this.
Yes, it's about celebration. We're lucky to be able to celebrate this today, and Migs, we are so ready for your pieces.
Yeah, thanks a lot Lakan for hosting. Thank you Kathy for our being the tech expert, of course, poetry reader. Let me just look for my poem. Hang on. Okay. Um, can you hear me, guys?
We can definitely hear you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Okay, so the poem I'm reading is something I've written when we were still living in the US and at the height of the pandemic. So back then, I thought a lot about the notion of distance, both in terms of physical and its psychic terms. We were in Georgia at that time, so physically the distance between Asia and where we were was really great. But then I realized that the psychic distance was even more, and yeah, it made me write this poem. So I'm going to read it now. It's called Revising the Law of Distance. The 10,000 miles that we used to bridge in a day's flight now belongs to the past. Once we had thought that it was impossible for the world to stop. But look outside now. Everything's at a standstill, suspended. Only season with its own law moves on, while we're trapped in this cage of disbelief. If only the blink of an eye had weight, and I could decrease the world's entropy, I would return to that curtain of time before this novel decade dawned on us, when I could have stopped the flight of birds. Then distance would have been only social, and not the light years that divide us now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Migs. Um, Migs, you know, that encapsulates a lot of how diaspora has played a lot in literature, especially between Singapore and the Philippines. I was wondering, Migs, what is the distance between your first home to the day?
Sorry, Lacan, can you repeat the question?
What is the distance? Since your piece was about distance, I wonder what is the distance between your first poem ever to today? How was that journey?
Yeah. So actually, the distance between my first home, I was born in the Philippines, in the northern part, and Atlanta, Georgia, where I was at the height of the pandemic, was around 10,000 miles. So that's what I wrote in my poem. So, but then I knew that in ordinary circumstances, 10,000 miles was traversable. But at the height of the pandemic, it was impossible to, think about it at that time because there were no flights, there were restrictions across borders. So it felt like, that's why I started to think about it as light years. Yeah, such a great distance, more than the 10,000 miles.
And when you talk about distance, definitely luck plays along somewhere in the middle. And as much as hard work, because we have to put effort to our writings as well. So thank you so much, Migs, for making us remember the distances that we have to take from point zero to point wherever we want to
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Migs.
Thanks a lot, Lakan. It's my pleasure to meet you and everyone online. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Talk about 10,000 miles. You know, uh, for people who do not know, you can actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, walk from, well, not, please don't walk. You can travel from Russia, Vladivostok, to the other side, I think, on the most western side of France. So you can traverse that. But, speaking of traversing, our next writer does know how to traverse and travel and really make that journey worthwhile. And this writer is from the University of Santo Tomas, graduated also from UP Diliman, University of Tokyo, University of Cambridge, and the Australian National University, where he earned his PhD. He is Professor 12, an assistant an assistant, and received the Palanca Award, and also shared his poems and his writings at the Cultural Center of the Philippines, the National Book Awards for Literature, and fellowships in Australia, Europe, North America, and East and Southeast Asia. That's a lot. He is one of the 7 achievement awardees for 2020 of the Department of Science and Technology here in the Philippines, and he is a life member of Clare Hall at the University of Cambridge. Let us all welcome, please. Let's get lucky with Jose Wendell Capili.
Hello, good evening to everyone. I am so happy to see many of you. Some of you are my friends and former students. So, my poem is entitled Along the Singapore River. I was a visiting scholar at NUS at ARI in 2005, and this poem was written around that time, but somehow after my PhD, I went back home and I became a full-time administrator and doing less writing. And during the pandemic, I uncovered some of my external drives and found this poem about Singapore. and all of a sudden, Eric Valles needed the poem for the anthology, and I had the most appropriate poem to submit, and it's now part of the anthology. So the title is Along the Singapore River. The river is remarkably hyphenated: noodles, tamarind paste, crushed peanuts dancing to a platter of shrimp heads in a lettuce wrap. There's coconut milk pork with fresh papaya becoming green, chunks adding thickness and flavor to a broth. Sweet potato, sweet snow peas served with rice, and ripe mango crisps, brightly expressing faith and crunch before senses that recognize. Yam and pumpkin may now easily be a meal on their own, but this confluence now moving outwards, overflows, fireworks, and lanterns um, embrace the sky, the greatest spectacle. You, looking at me, eludes the symmetry of rowers passing by. A recollection, market stalls, warming spices, coriander, curcumin, turmeric, leads us. Sorry, I'm having problems with the lighting. Uh, Leads us into this one long table where squid rings are seasoned with lime, jasmine, and lemongrass. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow. Wendell, you made me hungry. uh,
I had a hard time reading. Sorry.
oh, it's all right. I think in pandemic times we have learned how to live with light and dark, and also the middle of it all. And I think your poem just resonated with me on the richness of culture that we all share, and with food as well. Um, and I was wondering, Wendell, what what inspired you to write that poem, and how can you how can people be inspired with that poem? What would you have to say about that?
I think basically I was just in Ari. There was every summer they usually have a group of students who graduate students who visit Ari for a month, and I met some of these students, and they just dragged me into this tour of Singapore River in a private small boat, and I wasn't really into it, but I was surprised that I was actually enjoying the whole trip. I was not supposed to be part of the trip. They invited me at the very last minute, but I wasn't really a party person. I prefer coffee with small group of people. But I was very thrilled when eventually I was able to not just meet new friends, but be able, because around the time I think there was a holiday and there were fireworks all over, and I didn't think that I would actually be entertained by it. So I really it was a happy surprise. I just wrote the draft 2005. I didn't touch it until 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I uncovered an external drive that I'd not touched for over 10 years. It still survived. I checked if there were contents, old photos. I saw some of my Singapore photos and then found the poems in a group of poems that will actually now form part of a new book that will probably come out in a few years from now. So I think what happens is we have to be careful to rather we should be mindful of the little blessings that we receive every day, especially sometimes we think that we'll be in this place forever and ever, but you don't realize that at some point or the other we all move, and I think we should be able to commit to memory some of the most remarkable things that we experience for the moment, because sometimes they will not come back again. And it's amazing that I was able to recover this poem and I will be able to share it with a number of people. So I'm very happy to have shared this. Even though I was having a hard time reading because of I'm nearsighted. I brought the wrong pair of glasses for the reading. So I realized that I should have gotten the other pair, but it was too late. So I had to remove it at the last minute. But I'm very happy to have shared this with everyone. So thanks
I,
very
I
much.
think I think it does not diminish the poem at all. The message of the poem, the surprise of a surprise of another surprise, and life is a series of surprises. And I think with your poem, Wendell, you made me more grateful of the unknown, of the unexpected, you know. So thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thanks. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye bye. And but you know what? We will be having them at the end of this entire program and ask them about something. How to be lucky. So now, speaking of surprises, I bet our next writer has a very good surprise for us, poetry wise. And because this poet is an author of the International Rubery Book Award, shortlisted The Infinite Library and Other Stories by Math Paper Press in 2017. And Here Be Dragons by Canvas Press 2015, which won the Romeo Forbes Children's Story Award in 2012. His play by mail interactive fiction piece, The Book of Red Shadows, debuted at the Singapore Writers Festival in 2020. He is a fellow of the Milford Science Fiction Writers Conference in the UK and the Cinemalaya Ricky Lee Film Scriptwriting Workshop, as well as a Jalan Besar Writer Residence at Singlet Station 2020 and 2021. My goodness, please get ready for the surprise of Victor Fernando R. Ocampo. Victor, we need your surprise. I think there is a connectivity issue, and but we will be having Victor very, very, very soon. I think I am seeing him arriving, and we are so ready.
Hi, Lakan. Can you hear me?
Hello, Victor. Yes,
Let
perfectly.
me give me a second to find my work. While I am actually looking for my stuff, let me just give you a little background on this story. I actually wrote another story called As If We Could Dream Forever, which appeared in the Quarterly Literature Review of Singapore 2 years ago. It was set in the same world where uh, people actually surrendered their entire lives 9 to 5 to the corporation. In exchange, they kept you professionally trained, they kept you very healthy, and at the end of the day, it shuts off and you're not bringing anything with you home. So you are completely owning your time. So I actually wrote this as something of a horror that I thought it would be scary for people. Kaya lang I was shocked that in that story, everybody who was in the audience actually said, I want that life. I don't want the autonomy. I want to be able to just forget my work and not remember what I do at work at all. And it was really an eye opener for me. And I thought that I wanted to explore that more. So I wrote this story, which is called The Easiest Way to Solve a Problem, uh, as sort of like a response to that shock of mine that ayaw ng mga people don't want to have autonomy. At a certain point, they're okay with somebody else leading their life for them. If it means that they will never get fat, they will never be unhealthy, and they will always do the best work that they can. So that is a scary thought. So here, the story is called The Easiest Way to Solve a Problem. So I will, how many minutes do I have? I don't know. 5 minutes, okay. So I'll read it up to, until somebody tells me to shut up. Okay. The first time Mercy surrendered her conscious self, she imagined for some unfathomable, unscientific reason that the process would cause immense pain. Flesh rendered, bones broken and dissolved, or at the very least, she would have to endure a brutal flaying by 1,000 mechanical cuts. Jesus have mercy, Lord have mercy. Para sa pamilya ko to, she cried through her headset. The young Chinese doctor attending to her tried to assure her that she'd feel no pain. However, no matter what he said, Mercy wouldn't stop crying. Eventually, he dropped his attempt at a pleasant bedside manner and just concentrated on maneuvering the loading harness that slowly immersed her body into a large bath of living nanomachines. Filipinos, he muttered under his breath, Xiao. This was how Mrs. Mercy Maalaala, 33 years old, trained roboticist, and a proud Batangueño from Lian, Batangas, began her employment in the automatic city. How was your first day? Her husband Rolando asked over a video call. I honestly don't know, Mercy answered. The first thing I did after I got to my dorm room was to review my security tapes. Apparently, I'd spent most of the day cleaning junk from logistics robots. I also had lunch, 2 coffee breaks, and a 1 hour gym period. It's just that I'm covered by a strict NDA, so I can't remember any of it. I don't think I could ever deal with that, Rolando said. I can't imagine surrendering my mind and body to a corporation. It's what's normal here. Their motto is adding humanity to the algorithm. It's not so bad, really. It's like I was asleep the whole time. When I woke up at 5 p.m., I felt so rested. I've never experienced anything like that before, Mercy explained. Besides, the money is good. It pays for the construction of our house, June schooling, and gives us something to put away for the future. I don't mind trading off a little of my freedom if it means giving us a better life. 3 years of your freedom isn't a small thing, Rolando argued. That's also 3 years we won't see you except at Christmas. It's not the first time, Mercy answered. Besides, both of us come from OFW families. If our parents and grandparents could deal with it, we can too. By the way, where's June? June, her husband yelled into the distance. Mama is on video call. Oh, just reminding you, I'll be a dive master at Anilao from tomorrow until Friday. Let's talk again on Saturday. A few minutes later, Mercy's son appears on the small video screen. Hi, Mama. How are you? Okay. How was school? School was okay. Have you had dinner? Yes. My room has a food printer that can make me any meal. I programmed it to make chicken tinola for dinner. That's cool, the young man said. Why is your room so dark? Oh, sorry, Mercy said as she fumbled for the room's environmental controls. Watch this, baby boy. The walls in the tiny room slowly started brightening as if the sun was rising on the horizon. On the video screen, Junjun could see his mother and her small dining set, silhouetted against the background of a familiar sliding sea. The blue-green waters moved in long sinuous veils towards a coarse sandy shore, where it broke and dragged away the delicate whirls left by little ghost crabs running swiftly across the beach. Mercy stood up the table and the chair folded away. She walked towards a sign that said, Welcome to Matabungkay Beach, Lian, Batangas. Looks like you have everything you need, Mama, Junjun said. I have to go and study. It's a short story. I don't want to read the rest, but I'll tell you something. I actually turned this into a screenplay, which I submitted for my final requirements to Cinemalaya screenplay class. And the longer version of this actually is kind of wild. It even has an orgy in it. Unfortunately, because this is a PG story that does not come out in this. Strange things happen when the government and your corporation can control you and you do not know what's going on. Yeah. So
Well,
that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much for the opportunity to read you a portion of my work. All
thank you
right.
so much, sir. And
Yeah.
for people who are watching us today, I told you, right? I told you
Yeah.
there's gonna be a surprise.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean this idea of a type of utopia, what is really terrifying. For many or most of us, not all of us, to be not in control.
But the most dangerous situation is that if you have no freedom, but everybody's okay with it, and that is essentially this the story here. Everyone's okay with it because no one's hungry. No one. Essentially, if you do not have any want, you don't care, and that's the sad part. And you will even protect something that may not be good for you. And that's basically the gist of the story. But you can read the rest in Get Luckier. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Lahan.
you.
All right. I don't know who's next. Who should I call?
Uh,
Eric?
Uh, it's going to be Christina next after you.
Christina. Very good. Thanks.
So, but thank you so much, Victor. And just like Victor said, if you want to be surprised and lucky enough to discover what's up with literature in both Singapore and the Philippines, then do get that book. It's called Get Lucky, and that's why we are all here today, celebrating some of the writers who had contributed to that publication. And it's about also supporting each other. And wouldn't it be amazing? Isn't this utopia where writers get supported very, very well? Well, well, that's an advocacy we can all fight for. Thank you so much, Victor. And I think we are ready for our next writer. And Utopia, yes, it's about a dream. And it is also a dream of mine to be a lawyer before. That didn't come into fruition. But you know what? Being a poet, definitely much better for me. Because this writer is also a lawyer, a law professor, a legal scholar, and writer from the Philippines. She practices law at the Hildawa and Montes law offices and is a member of the faculty of Goes and Better Fight Graduate School of Law, where she is also a JSD candidate and the University of Asia and the Pacific Institute of Law. She obtained degrees from the Universidad de Navarra in Pamplona, Spain, Master of Laws 2012, and the University of the Philippines College of Law, Bachelor of Laws in 2005. And this writer is prolific. And she has authored several human interest featuring articles, essays, and poems which have appeared in various publications. We are so excited to have our next writer, Cristina Montes.
Hello. Thank you very much for those kind introduction. So I have two poems that I would like to share. Both are responses to poems that have been published in Get Luckier. The first poem I will share is a response to the poem entitled Cooking Laing by Dalton Remoto. My own poem is entitled Seasonings. I thought adulting in Spain would be easy. I'd learn to cook from YouTube videos. And if the dish would not turn out right, I'd have an excuse to head to a bar and dine on pinchos and drink cerveza as the flaming sun sets. Then winter came, the trees were bare, the wet wind was biting, darkness set in early, the shadowed flat was empty. I craved for arroz caldo. I had what I need: onions, garlic, ginger, cut up chicken, egg and rice, 1 part rice, 6 parts water, lemon instead of calamansi. But patis and kasubha were not among the spices that Elcano loaded from the Victoria in 1522. Centuries hence, they are still the missing ingredients, rare as a conversation with friends over arroz caldo. Instead, I have strangers on YouTube delivering monologues in unfamiliar kitchens. So that's my first poem. My second poem is a response to Eric Valles' poem Salud. That poem was an ode of an expression of gratitude to the frontliners during this pandemic. So this is my own homage to certain kinds of frontliners whom we probably never acknowledge. The title is The Church Janitor's Wife. My husband tells me that in between penitents, he wipes the screen and kneeler with Lysol to disinfect them of germs that linger in droplets spitted out with "Bless me, Father, I absolve you," and the scandals mentioned in between. My husband does not see the germs wiped out, like in before and after demos in advertisements. But as long as he does his job, the penitents fear no germs. The rag is soggy and dirty in his hand. I pray his job of cleaning up after everyone else's mess will not make him sick. I hope the Lysol works as the penitents trust the priest's absolution. Thank you.
Well, quite an interesting duo you have there, Christina. I mean, from deliciousness to, well, interesting. You don't want, because lunchtime for some people also. Right now it's 12, around 12:01 p.m. here in Singapore and the Philippines. So, but I'm very, very interested because those two are very, very, they have different contexts,
Yes,
you
yes.
know. And I was wondering if you can omit an ingredient
Mm-hmm.
to remove the germs
Mm.
in huh, in how people write poetry nowadays, what would it be?
If I could remove an ingredient to remove the germs in how people write poetry nowadays, wow,
Yes.
that's a tough question.
This could qualify as a Miss Universe question, huh?
uh, well, uh, that is rather tough, a tough question because to answer that question, it would make me sort of impose my own poetic style as a canon as for other writers. And while I believe that poetry has to comply with certain standards, I also like getting surprised by a poem that is different from what I expect a good poem to be, but which surprises me just the same. So for that reason, I find it rather difficult to answer your question.
But Christina,
Yes.
good. And I think it is delicious.
Mm-hmm.
It is delectable, because it celebrates the uniqueness of people and
Mm-hmm.
writers,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you saying that you want to respect
Mm-hmm.
people's preferences as much
Mm-hmm.
as you want to be respected too by other people. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was such a lucky answer, and a great one of that. That was great. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you
thank you
too.
so
Thank you
much.
too.
Wow, I love it when we celebrate that collaborative spirit, and I think that's what we're doing today. And we are teaming together, Singapore and the Philippines, and seeing what can we work together on. There's the book, and you can purchase that book. So just have that, and have that keyboard, get typing, and support writers, um, like who we have today. And I think it's very interesting on how people have had so many stories about diaspora, because that is equally delicious and succulent. And I think we're very lucky today, because our next writer is from Marinduque in the Philippines and has been working in Singapore since 2010. Her poem Alikabok was shortlisted for the Migrant Workers Poetry Competition 2016 and was included in the anthology Songs from a Distance. She also contributed to the books Our Homes, Our Stories, Voices of Migrant Domestic Workers in Singapore, and Call and Response, a migrant local poetry anthology. And here to celebrate that unique diaspora story, and also Singapore and the Philippines combined. Let's all welcome Reah Maac.
Thank you, Salakan, for that introduction.
Reah?
Thank you, Salakan, for the introduction. Everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, but of course technology can be a bit tricky sometimes. It's cutting in and out, and we would love to hear the entirety of
Hi.
your poem.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Okay. Thank you, Salakan. It's a pleasure to be part of this reading dialogue across the sea. Actually, earlier I'm a bit worried, but when I heard some of you talking in Tagalog, I said, "Oh, I belong." So now I will read my poem, which is entitled Extraordinary Woman. She was shipwrecked into a society that tried to stitch her lips, snatch her voice, but she knew she wasn't born to keep her mouth shut. She wasn't born to stay inside the four corners of her room. She was born to shine, to speak up, to walk on her chosen path, to enrich her talent that lies within, to follow her heart, filled with compassion inside. So there she is, standing up, a woman with a heart full of love. With patience, she strives, rearing other people's children, showering them with love and care, treated like her own. Full of hope, homesickness, she can cope. A woman, an inspiration for her courage and determination, for keeping her head up high, like a bird soaring in the sky, being surrounded by people who sculpt her image. She was there, serving with passion. She was there, doing a good deed, letting it shine over the horizon to be counted and remembered in the society that punched her below the belt. She is far from what they wanted her to be. She has her own capacity. She has her own standard of beauty. With her unending story, she is extraordinary. Thank you.
Wow. Rhea, I when I was staying in Singapore, I met a lot of the migrant workers, writers in Singapore. And I was working together with Zakir.
Oh,
Hello, Zakir.
yes, yes,
If you're
yes.
watching, and the
He's
story of
our sorry. He's our
I go ahead.
leader of migrant
Yes, he's
writing. Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
He's wonderful, and I wonder in that poem, what's the story that is underneath that? What is the if there's one wish for a migrant worker writer, such as yourself, what will be your wish if there's one wish that you could get? What would it be?
To treat migrant workers as a human.
Oh, okay. You know what? My heartstrings. uh, let's
I
not
think
cry
every
here.
migrant workers wishes that.
Oh wow. Rhea, that's wow. My heart, and I think this is a message that um, a lot of migrant workers can relate to. And I think so many stories also from people who live in those countries can say about the dedication that is deserving of respect. So thank you so much, Rhea. That
Thank you.
voice is needed to be heard.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rhea. Wow, I mean, that's why one of the things I love, apart from being a poet, I love listening. I love discovering new writers and new poets, and it adds it adds into this journey, this story, the weaving, really, of what makes life so vibrant. And I think this book, Get Lucky, it's not just about luck. You see, it's about the voices that work hard as well. Now, I know that the next writer works hard, like really gives a lot out there. And although primarily a playwright and children's story writer, this poet has won eight Don Carlos Palanca Memorial Award for literature, published three children's books, had his scripts staged by different community theater companies and student organizations. Although this poet teaches literature class in the University of Asia and the Pacific in Pasig City in the Philippines, it was only in 2020 when he began to actively study and explore the craft of poetry writing. He has been pushing himself to write poetry on a weekly basis ever since, and that is what you call hard work. And let us hear more of this hard work and the fruition of that hard work. Let's all welcome our next writer, Joem Antonio.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. I will be reading two short poems. Both of them are responses to a few poems in the collection of Get Luckier. So this first one is a response to Felix Xiong's I Do, and this is called The Wedding Band. That noose that strangles with Herculean conviction, that immortal hydra head of the ego is that daily cold gold reminder that everything I make with these hands, from that love to that morning coffee, is for her whose name brands my skin from inside the band. Okay. Um, the next poem is entitled um, Luck Be the Devil. This is a response poem to Theophilus Queck's Lucky. Okay. I don't believe in luck, as luck clearly doesn't believe in me to succeed. As, like the devil, it clearly leads me to high places, promising me the world if I'd only kowtow and take that leap of faith. I've dashed my foot too many times already, and will likely do so again. It keeps finding ways to lure me in with lentil soup and other forbidden fruit, hellish suppers, clearly not the last. Though remembrance is weak, I repeatedly bet that my chances of winning against luck are as likely as stones turning into loaves. Thank you.
I did not expect that.
Thank you.
I wasn't ready for that. And I think Cathy Candano wasn't ready for that also. If you see in the chat. Oh wow. This
Thank
is
you.
what's beautiful about poetry. It
Mm.
can always take you by surprise. And I felt that. I
Oh, thank you
felt
so much.
and I was wondering actually now that you share those two poems, what would be the poem that you would still want to write that you're scared of?
Oh, wow. That's a very, very good question. Actually, I think it's still lurking me somewhere. I think it's still hunting me somewhere. So um that's why I think I keep on writing and to try to keep ahead of it. But I think it's like, it's like death. At one point it'll catch up, but in the meantime I'll try to write as much as I can. So that when it catches up to me, I hope I'm ready.
You know, sometimes it just arrives,
Yes.
randomly. That's why I do not know if you're the type of person who brings paper and pen with you all the time.
Yeah. Well, I've trained myself to try to write on my cell phone. It's
Yeah.
it's become a habit that whenever something pops in, that when I'm lined up in at the grocery, or waiting for something to cook, I try to get a few lines down. That's I'm trying to make a habit out of it.
You know what? It's about habit. And you know what? Thank you so much. That was a
Yeah.
sound advice for everyone watching today who who are exploring poetry or writing. It is hard work and you build a habit around it. And I think that is beautiful when somebody tells you that and you needed to hear it. So thank you, thank you so much, Joam.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you. And I think this is what's beautiful about poetry. You just don't know when you're gonna get hit. When you're going to say thank you. When are you going to say, "Mate, not today?" you know, um, and and I think this is profound in a lot of, if not all, poets and writers. And it's about being observant as well, just like our next writer, who loves observations of human experiences and the world it exists in. And it's a um, penchant for taking those notes, you know. And and this next writer eventually evolved into confessional poetry as she journaled through her therapy for Hashimoto's encephalopathology. Hashimoto's encephatho. See, it happens even in today's, even for a host like me and a poet. Encephatho. Ens. Are we going to be editing this, Christina? Sorry, we're going to editing this, Kathy. Uh, Hashimoto's ense Hashimoto's encephalopathy palo oh en encephalopathy. Hashimoto's encephalopathy, a rare relapsing brain disease. This writer found poetry as a powerful, mindful, meditative exercise that helped her organize her thoughts and emotions, leading to self discovery and a more profound appreciation of existence. Coupled with a desire to explore philosophy, psychology, humanity, and nature, she hopes to elevate her writing from mere self healing into an avenue to connect with all walks of life. Let's all welcome Mariela Andrea Lansang.
Thank you for that introduction.
Thank you, Mariela. Mariela, before you begin,
Yes,
how do you enunciate that? Because I had trouble uh, enunciating that.
it's encephalopathy. Yeah, it's so it sounds like sushi. It's very rare. Yeah. Um. Okay, so I'll be performing two reaction poems as well. They're an exploration of how luck becomes more profound as we reminisce and mature further. Yeah. So the first poem is a reaction to Desmond F. X. Con's poem about K. The lion's gaze. I, a water bearer, was watching you, a lion, drink from a lake. Your amber gaze awakened my sky and soul. Space swelled when our eyes met. Exchange of glances made mundane moments into thoughts of fondness. An untold goal between our glimpses. Yet fear of fangs you never showed kept me blind to the sun's rays. Before I knew it, the lake grew, the view I had of you sank. My spilling jug widened our pond. Soon you were gone. To open doors you hastened. Mischances and reveries are all I have of you to see. Sunrise is not a lion's mane. In my days, I forgot that sunlight is the past. A sunset is the day's goodbye, telling us time flies fast. There was a person, no lion. With coffee and milk for latte, I now would have greeted you with my embarrassing question. Would you have breakfast with me? Now you're a poem. Fate was late. The next one is a response to Janeline Vergara's Death Without Goodbye. Under the sun, bask in the golden glow, be undone in the sun's heat. Complete it with sobs. Your heart throbs. A gift, like the shine on my casket. Mourn me at morning. When earth celebrates, it will be dark underground. Yet all is all right, knowing you are in the light. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Wow, Mariela, it's there's something about sincere poetry. You know, when you talk about something that happened to you or that has affected you, there's an extra kick, you know, to it. And I was wondering, um, how was your how did the therapy uh, changed you as a writer? The encephalopathy. Okay, I'm gonna get at that better next time. See, I'm trying to practice it. But how was the therapy? How did the therapy contribute to you as a writer?
Well, first, I think when getting ill was a very humbling experience. Uh, Usually, when uh, you get to you get to you get to appreciate the small things more, like the things that let's say, oh, I can run today, something like that. So just little things like I started before, it was just writing about thoughts, writing about for a certain purpose, but now I just write about what I appreciate, what I observe, and really just to enjoy life. It's so for me it became writing as as close as breathing sometimes when it gets claustrophobic when this in a pandemic. Yeah, it I yeah. I guess
Yeah,
that's the
I
best I
get
can
you,
say.
I get you, Mariela. Like it becomes you, you know, and it becomes a hidden need to write, to express, you know, and I would like to say thank you because you've let us into that journey of yours of healing through your writing, you know, and I think we are all lucky to experience someone's life on the page or on the stage. So thank you so much, Mariela. Thank you. Wow, you know, it's the stories that makes poetry magical, and At the same time, it's a private matter as well between the poet and the page or the stage. And the emotions can just travel very, very quickly, just like the next poet. Because this poet, when I first saw her perform her poetry, she got me. Yeah, and I am blessed to know this poet and her poetry. And this poet, if you want to know about more about her, she has published her poetry in Asia Literary Review, Asian Chart, Anvil Publishing's Crowns and Oranges, New Philippine Poetry. Philippine Pen Centers is At Home in Unhomeliness, an anthology of new Philippine post-colonial poetry in English. She volunteers for Singapore's National Poetry Festival, which we are now in, professionally. Cathy contributes to Google's Asia Pacific Partnership. And I am so honored to have Cathy Candano join us today.
Thank you so much, Lacan. This is always a pleasure for me to be here with kababayans and global Pinoys all over the world. I am always humbled by the amount of raw talent, heart, and spirit that sometimes you just need all these communities to get you to feel like you belong. And I loved what some people said, like just being in this call reminds us that there is a space for everyone who writes poetry. Pinoys at any part of the world, they can access their culture and share it. And this is one of those beautiful spaces at the Philippine Singapore cross-country call that we have today at the Poetry Festival Singapore. Now, the poem I want to read to you today is actually a very special poem. It's in the Get Luckier anthology that we're talking about, but it also was in a very special part of my own romance, part of my own journey into finding my special partner. Is part of it is writing about this person and what I learned about having this person enrich my own experience of life. And one of the things that came out was the idea that maybe echoing some of Joaquim's messaging to consider the moments in between transits as places of creation, that you can give birth to beautiful things in the most unexpected places. This poem is about that. The space between words is a pause. For Mike Chua. In my memory, there are 3 types of pauses, each inaudible, a space in between words which has become ours. This is the catalog. Number 1, between breaths, when you held the packet of air, waiting for me to decide, and I couldn't decide if now was the best time to blow the candles out till the match struck itself, lit itself on fire onto that birthday candle wick, and you exhaled for me in your off-key tone. You softly sang the opening lines of Happy Birthday. Number 2, between breaths, when my eyes widened and the salt-tinged bead of sweat slowly made its way down from my brow, cupping the curve of my face, resting gently on my upper lip, my lower lip numbed from the heat of the chili seed oil from yours. Number 3, between breaths, when I leaned in You turned my neck in your palm, the grip of your fingers barely touching the ghost heap between us. I can almost taste the warm air you tentatively left behind. In my memory, each pause is ascribed to you, such that between words, new syllables of space form into our very own world's lingua franca. The space between words is a poem waiting for its home. The space between words is our poem waiting for a home. That's my gift to everyone. Thank you for having me, Lakan.
Thank you, Cathy. That last line, that brought me home. And home, there's a poet from the US, a friend of mine who had a piece about every open mic is our church. It is our home. Every poetry reading, like this one, is a home. So thank you, Cathy. I was always, you do this to me. Why? Uh, and you know, and the thing is, people do not know. When I first met you back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, you just got you got married.
Yes, I got married at the height of the pandemic. There weren't many people allowed for safety reasons, and you make your own home, right? Wherever you can, no matter the context, no matter the challenge. And you write your own poem.
And I think poetry is that, it serves as a home of our homes, right? And Kathy, I was wondering, like, what type of home would you still want to write about?
That's a really good question. You're full of really tough cookie questions, like on tonight for the poets on this call. So definitely, I would consider Get Luckier right now is one of those metaphorical homes because it's a collection of where our voices live. But the amazing thing is this collection lives in two homes. It's in the analog world on paper, in libraries. It will be at the Poetry Festival Singapore. You can get a physical copy. And I think some of the readers in Singapore are holding a copy and reading from it. And you do have a digital version that lives online that doesn't need actual paper. And it can be accessed by everyone so freely. You don't even have to buy the book. And that for me is my understanding of the new homes that exist for us as writers is we have access with this space to talk to everyone, share stories, and help more people belong to our community and share more of these connective tissue. So for me, that's the new home that excites me. It's the digital home of writers today. And we're also, an amazing source of that fusion of different homes, whether it's homes that are virtual like the one we're in now, or even more, regular homes that connect and build more connection between networks. So I'm thinking that is the future for all of us who we never know when this pandemic will be officially over. Different parts of the world are closing and opening. So the best we can do is keep close, be open, and keep on bravely telling our stories, right? And what was amazing for me is the bravery is something you have to dig really deep when you are a bit more isolated in the heart of the pandemic, when you don't see your community as frequently as you can. And so this is just one of those beautiful ways to make sure our connective tissue is still there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we look at the pandemic times as negative, but I think there were more homes unearthed in the pandemic, and we have made homes with people that we would not have met ever. Uh, but this pandemic has given us the opportunity to be grateful and to open more homes. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wow. And here we are. Oh my goodness, almost at the end. And it's about, you know, home. The concept of home is really relative. You know, sometimes you find a home in a book or in a YouTube video or in Spotify. You know, and poetry is there one way or another. And I think it's about those spaces in between that we celebrate. Just like this poet, our last one for today, here at Get Luckier at Poetry Festival Singapore. Now, this writer is a second generation Filipino, creative and researcher. Now, he's born in Singapore, and his writing dwells on what it means to be in the spaces between, the in-betweens. That's why I love those spaces. And the thing is, he's very interested in issues of race, diaspora, transnational identity, gender, and sexuality. His writing has been published by Vagabond Press and can be found in Quarterly Literary Literature, among others. Let us all welcome for today, Paul Jerusalem. Hello, Paul.
Hi, good evening po.
Good
Hello.
evening.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I yeah, as well, I am a Filipino Singaporean poet, writer, creative researcher, and I'm going to be reading two poems today in this collection. The first one is called River Children. So here goes. River Children. Tagalog means river dwellers. I cannot speak my father's mother tongue. My mother picked it up when her family moved to Manila. Manila means there are flowers on the mangroves that linger along the swamp, waiting to erupt into flat cement planks that will crack as all who age must. When we moved back to Singapore, I found it weird that the sun set so late. At 6, it would have been pitch dark in Pasig. We lived near the river, where I once fished out a child who was done whaling. In Tampines, we lived in neat but gaudy blocks covered in pastel shades that, on hindsight, spoke of a toddler's unwise decision to bestow the walls with his talent, which I wish they didn't peel off and leave reeking of fresh paint every 5 years, along with new angsana trees that spring up on what were concrete grass patches. I have a picture with my mother at Marina City Park before it was closed off and became Gardens by the Bay. Marina Reservoir was conceived by pouring sand into the depths of the delta, shaving the mangroves off the river mouth into the shape of the female reproductive system for good luck. When we visited my father's hometown one Christmas, he brought me to the cemetery. Pointing to an empty patch filled with dried angsana seeds, bury me here when I die, underneath the Nara tree. So that was River Children. And as you can tell, it's a lot about finding similarities and also the nuances of differences between being Filipino and being Singaporean. Just for context, I'm ethnically Filipino. Both my parents are Filipino, but I was born and raised and spent virtually my whole life in Singapore. So that's what that poem was all about. And because of that, Sobrang mahina yung Tagalog ko. So because of that, I wrote this next poem, which is about being terrible at my own mother tongue. This next poem is called Tongue Twister. So Louise Gluck says, we look at the world once in childhood, the rest is memory. My ancestors' language is a tongue twister. Too many consonants nod from the back of the jaw, vowels flung from the nose, demanding a fraud of more openness and clarity than I can muster. Sometimes I wake up awed that I had spoken my language fluently, my tongue no longer stiff. In every dream, I look at the world I left once to untie my throat, finding myself back in the stream that led to a home I knew as another childhood, before it would unseam itself to fit into another childhood, only memory, my leg jerking me back to reality, stuttering. So that was tongue twister. Sorry about how hoarse I sound. I'm recovering from sickness, but I hope you enjoyed those poems, and thank you so much for sparing the rest of the apology.
Oh, please do not apologize because those poems, it speaks of our
Please
yearning.
hang on. For some reason, the output suddenly switched. I can't hear you. Let me figure it out.
We are waiting. We'll be waiting for Paul to come back to us. Uh, there we go. We
Oh,
have
I'm so
his.
sorry. Okay, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Great. All right. But I was saying earlier, Paul, that your poetry speaks of the yearning of not just the people that is a product of diaspora, but every single human being in the world. Aren't we all nomads? And I think that yearning was just so powerfully felt with your pieces. So thank you. And if you think I'm not gonna ask you a question, you're mistaken. Uh, so, Paul, what would be the Filipino word, just one Filipino word, that you could tell the country Singapore?
One Filipino word.
One.
One lang. Napakalalim ng tanong yan. Teka.
Just one word to tell the country of Singapore.
Okay, I thought of the word. And I chose this word because whenever I use this, Filipinos will tell me that napakalalim yan. Binasan mo na po. And I'm like, lalim ba? Like, okay, my Tagalog bad, but it's the word that my parents and that my parents use. The word is sinilang, because it's a word I use a lot in describing myself. And I've been told that normal people would say, dito ako pinalaki, or dito ako I guess pinalaki. But yeah, sinilang, I like how it has S and G, like Singapore. Pero yeah, it's just such a nice word, and it's on the first line of anak, which some Singaporeans, especially Malay Singaporeans, know that song. So I like the word.
Yeah, that's beautiful because sinilang is actually a Malay on origin. Much
Malay in origin, talaga.
it is sinilang. A lot of Filipino words are actually have Malay origin, and which just bridges a lot of similarities between the Southeast Asian Peninsula to the Philippines and Indonesia, and Brunei and the other countries. And it's what binds us. And I think that was such a beautiful answer because it's being giving birth, being born in a place does not only happen once, and
Pak na pak.
I know what? Sorry, I spoke Filipino.
Pak ka nerd.
I love that. You know what? I this is what I love about what I do as a host also, and you just like get to experience the the excitement, and it's about beginnings also. So and if I'm not mistaken, you're quite young,
I'm 28.
or or is it the what?
Dalampot, walo ako.
Okay, this is the part where we say that this is the equatorial skin. So, you know, right? So, but thank you so much, Paul, and I hope that we can inspire so many people to write as bravely as you, as inquisitive as you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the very kind words.
No, no, no. I'm I'm selecting the words that best describes what I feel. So, and that's just it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you to well, wait, I'm not letting go of everyone here because I still have one final question. Oh, this is for everyone. Get ready. Now, what would be what is lucky for you as a poet or a writer? Let's go with Wilson first.
Ah, lucky as okay, repeat question. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good, Wilson. This question is for everyone
Yes.
that who had shared today,
Yes.
and so the question is, what do you find lucky being a poet or being a writer?
You can express what you can express things that normally you cannot. There are many things you want to express, but when you write a poem, you can compress everything into something. Pag poetry, that's something you have complicated ideas, you have experiences, emotions. You can compress it into something.
Right.
You
No,
can
it's
express.
thank you so much,
Thank
Wilson.
you.
Okay, so it's gonna be like a rapid fire question answer. Let's. I don't know, Paul. I think you have to drag these people from your end. Migs. Yeah. So we have Migs, and then we'll have Wendell. Or you know what? I think here's what
I
we're
think
gonna
we're
do.
considering everyone has to be able to come here para lahat kami nandito.
Okay, yeah. So this is like a family photo, you know. So, Wendell, Migs, what makes you lucky as a poet or a writer?
Are we okay? I feel lucky as a writer because I only wanted to publish one poem when I was younger, and to get published many times over is I think a gift. Every time, I mean, this is my I have not published poetry in a long time. I've been publishing a lot of research and I've been doing a lot of university administrative work, but Get Luckier came along and there was an opportunity for another poem to get published. So I feel lucky just to be able to publish at a time when I feel that I don't think I could write anymore. And suddenly there were opportunities to write. So for me, that's a huge blessing. When you're on the verge of not writing and then the opportunity to write and publish comes along, it's always a gift. I'm so happy to see my former students here. Si Cathy Candano when she was high school. And Joe M's PhD. Uh,
Oh
but I'd
wow.
like to promote Kamiling Bakery because I go there every often. Masarap yung egg pie, Wilson. Thank you very much. Your staff are very nice to me. And the cakes are wonderful. And at the height of the pandemic, they were open. I just have to, it's amazing that Wilson gets to write and organizes his many events, but he still maintains the management of his business very well. Like the very well trained staff. I At the height of the ECQ, I was able to go there. Sometimes they would deliver, but I just sometimes would prefer going there. You would so it gives you the blessing of being able to eat good bread and being able to write at the same time. So it's serendipitous. Like the bakery owner, the historical bakery owner, the entrepreneur is here, and he's also a writer, and he's with us, and he's in the anthology. So that's another huge blessing. So it's amazing that the person who feeds me, so I can write the best way I can. The manufacturer of the bread, the owner of that business establishment, is also a writer, and that's a huge blessing.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Well, you know what? Another reason for me to actually visit you very soon, Wilson.
Okay. I'll just sit here so that you
Yes,
can
Meg.
you can see me. So
Yes.
what makes me lucky as a poet? So first of all, I think I'm blessed that I could express my thoughts in verse form. So that in itself is a huge blessing. And I think secondly, I'm blessed to have a community of poets. Most of them have become friends as well. So of course, Kathy's here, and Eric, everyone, my fellow contributors for Get Luckier. And because I'm also a poet, I get a chance to meet Lacan. So, by being a poet, my community, my connections as a writer is also becoming wider. So for me, that makes me really lucky.
It's a small world.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, Migs. How about, is Victor still there?
Yeah, Victor is here. Victor.
While we're waiting for Victor, we can ask Paul first. Uh, is Paul still there, or did he escape already?
Thank you
So
to
while
Professor pala. Kanina na nakadmute pala ako. Fan ako o Professor din ah. Thank you.
So
you know,
Victor is here. Thank you so much, Lacan,
thank you,
everyone.
thank you so much.
Hello again.
So what makes you lucky as a poet or a writer?
Tama si Bell. Tatanungin mo ako ng beautiful question. What makes us lucky? Actually, we're lucky to be alive in one of the most remarkable time periods humanity has ever seen. We could end up solving things like finding a cure for cancer, going to the moon again. Kaya lang also we're at the time period when we can wipe ourselves off existence as well. So it's lucky kasi isipin nyo, when my grandmother was born, the airplane didn't even exist. And yet the very fact na nandito kami ni Cathy sa Singapore ngayon is something we take for granted. We live in an amazing time. We're able to be together ngayon, even if we are 3,000 kilometers apart. That's what makes us lucky. We're lucky to just be alive. Ngayon, some people will say, stupid. Yun nga yung ayoko. I don't want to be alive. And the thing is na, but you are. Sorry. And we are lucky to actually even have you. Because every single person that's alive and that's here has something to contribute. Even if it's something negative, it adds to yung ating body of humanity. And as writers, that's actually what we contribute. We write the human story. And good stories and bad stories are all stories, and they're part of who we are. And that's what makes us lucky.
Woo! There we, you know what, like the utopia really came out again.
Mali nga yun
Thank
eh,
you,
kasi
thank
I
you, thank you
mostly
so
write
much.
about dystopias.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Something to look forward to. Thank you so much, Victor. How about you, Christina?
Hi. Hi again. Um, okay, what makes me lucky as a poet? Wait, there's feedback.
Patengking mic ko rito. Baka sa
Yeah.
akin galing.
Okay. So what I think makes me lucky as a poet? I remember there's this poet who shared with me this insight. He said that poetry is the search for the true names of things. And I think that's what makes us lucky as poets is that we are there in that search for the true names of things, and that we get to discover the real meaning of words. We get to discover the real power of words, and we are able to squeeze all the juices from a word, no? And of course, we are lucky, but at the same time, this for that we can do this. But at the same time, it I think with this gift, with this fortune, comes the, I guess, the mission to express what, because for me as a poet, I always get edified when I hear people tell me, you know what, your poem expressed exactly what I feel, exactly what I wanted to say. And I think that is our mission as a poet, is to um, express truths, express meaning, to speak for humanity, to make this world more human.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Whew, okay. This is like,
Lahat, may dadagdagan. Yeah,
oh,
may
yes.
dadagdagan isa. For people like me na nasa Singapore, for Filipinos like me in Singapore, one lucky thing is this volume exists to show the diaspora story. 10% of the Philippines population actually doesn't live in the Philippines. Kaya lang majority of the stories ng Filipino are, of course, obviously set sa Philippines. So it is lucky for us to be able to have this volume so that we're able to talk about our stories. And in a way, our stories affects everybody else that's there, because we all have family, we all have friends, mga Pilipinong nasa Pilipinas sa ating bayan, and our stories here, I think, are worth telling people about. Yan. So that's it. Sorry, singit ulit ako.
Yeah, we're good. I mean, you know what? That's, we always give way, you know, to for voices to be heard because we don't know what we're missing. You know, so thank you so much, Joam. How about you?
Yeah. For me, luck would be well, luck. Being lucky as a poet would be that moment where your subject matter just walks right in front of your eyes, and the words you need follow right after. Yeah.
Hey, I love that. Thank you so much, Joam.
Thank
Rhea,
you.
Rhea Maac, are you still with us?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, hello everyone again. I'm lucky as a poet because I've been a member of Migrant Writers of Singapore, which is founded by Zakir Hussain. And this migrant community become my family here, which become our platform to share how we feel, especially during this pandemic. And also, I think I'm not just lucky tonight, I'm the luckiest for being one of the readers tonight. I was able to meet all of you. So yeah, I'm very lucky.
Thank you so much. Oh wow. And there's so much message to say, and we cannot wait for Mariela. Uh, for you, w- tell us about like being a poet and being lucky being one.
I, um, I think what makes what makes a poet the luckiest is when we can capture just the essence of a moment, and it's and um sorry, brain fog. Yeah, well, okay, just to explore the brain fog, for example, like with me, I sometimes write a poem when I get the seizure. It helps. and and the wonderful thing about it is that yes, it's you write about one singular topic for you. Let's say for me, I just wrote it just to cope with the seizure. But then when I share it with someone else, it evolves into something different. And so I love that conversation and exactly what we're doing right now, responding to each other's poems. And especially for me, I feel very humbled and lucky. I think I'm the neophyte here and the youngest. So really, thank you for having me.
I think gratefulness. It's everywhere here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Kathy, how about you?
So for me, the biggest thing that I want to say is just being in the same space with all of you makes me feel so, it's like the notch up of lucky. It's blessed. And the reason why I say that is because I'm actually one of those people that really wanted to travel to see my family back in Manila for over 2.5 years. They weren't able to come to my wedding because you can't do that when the pandemic and when you want to get married. And so all of this ways of connecting, I think it's just making me just so grateful to be able to still connect to everyone who brings joy to other people. And poetry is one of those special things that it can travel without you, you know. And I think Christina talked a bit about that too, that it's so condensed, concrete, and it's almost that little vignette that is so real that you can put it out there and you don't even have to be there as the poet. It can tell the feeling of that moment without you. And that is, I feel, our power is we can capture that, those things that people think is insignificant. You know, I still remember from this call today the feeling of nostalgia that I heard in Paul's poems, but it's nostalgia of his family. And I hear the nostalgia firsthand of missing food that's familiar from Cristina. And I heard the difficulty of migrant struggle both in Reah's poem, but also in Wilson's poem, you know, from forebears that made their home on a bench. All of these are real things that happen to us. And I just feel so blessed that we can put that out there. It is real and it can go on without us after we end this call. And I'm just so, my hair is standing up on my arms, just so grateful for this opportunity. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. You make me
Thank
feel
you so
lucky.
much, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Oh my goodness. Now, lastly, Paul, are you still with us? We're not sure if Paul is still here. It would be great to have his take. Uh,
Opo, I'm here.
yes, Paul.
Okay, so what makes me lucky is a metaphor that fits. Yun. Kasi napaka-rare ng metaphor which makes sense. Usually talagang fina-force yung metaphor, pero when you have a metaphor that both on the level of form and content fit into the rest of the poem or essay or whatever, I really feel lucky. So for example, kanina yung poem na ni-recite ko, when I realized that the Philippine national tree, yung Nara, is basically the same thing as the angsana that we have in Singapore, which is super common. It's on all the roads. Like it's usually, yeah, it's a very common tree here, one of the top 5 most common trees in Singapore. I was like, ako yun. Like that's me as a metaphor. So I feel lucky when I find a good metaphor.
Metaphors and poetry. Yes. Thank you so much, Paul. Now, we have come to the close of our event, Get Luckier, brought to you by Poetry Festival Singapore. We would like to extend our gratitude to everyone who shared their poetry today and also their hearts and the people who are watching right now on our Facebook account. Thank you. Thank you so much. And of course, we would love to thank National Arts Council of Singapore, the estate of Yang Poi Ngon, our sponsor, Books Kinokuniya, and our partner, Poetry Global Network. You are all invited to check out other programs because there are a lot of programs at the Poetry Festival Singapore, and you can find them out in our socials. Do check them. There are a lot of events, workshops, open mics, readings that are made available for you by Poetry Festival Singapore. Thank you so much, Eric Tensai Valias, for making this possible. And to close the night, because I'm not just a host, I'm also a poet. I have to part everyone in this event with a poem, and I did not prepare a poem, so I'll just do an impromptu poem for everyone, which I usually do anyway. So, um, okay. There are pages in my mouth that knows how to bend the vowels, the consonants that choose on each breath. Let me pray for all the hands that knows how to exchange beyond the screen. Let me say gratitude to you. For there is no greater beauty than to see all the specters of colors reaching from one shore to another, celebrating the ocean between it. Let us see beyond the days as they clock in to the nights, and those nights chime into new sunrises. And as I look into the screen, I see beginnings, and I see thank yous. For you, let you be the celebration of poetry, because you are poetry that is not just lucky. You are a gift. So thank you. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope that you have a grateful day ahead of you, and see you soon.